Okay, hey YouTube. This week I'm going to try a little bit of a different format for this video. So I'm going to actually base this video off of a discussion topic that was for this last week's episode of Tea and Kiki. So Tea and Kiki's, it's T-E-A, and Kiki, K-I-K-I-S, is a Google Hangout / YouTube video thrown on by one of my friends, Kat Black, a fellow trans woman out of LA who also does her own YouTube blogging out there, and she'll bring together like a group of trans girls and we will all sort of discuss our experiences. This past week, the discussion point on Saturday, so it's every Saturday starting at like 9 Central to 1 a.m. Central. The subject was dating disasters, and so after kind of going full time, I don't have a ton of dating disasters. I have like a couple of awkward stories, but out on a date with this guy and we're talking about, I think I'm a pretty good conversationalist. I can talk about just about anything. And then at some point, I don't know if there's a pause or he just wants to ask it, but he says, so you're transsexual, what's that like? And that has to be probably one of the most awkward experiences of my life, because as I've mentioned on these videos before, whenever I find out somebody knows I'm trans and they don't know because I've told them, my initial reaction is always, well, how do you know? Like, is it that obvious? Like, how did you figure it out? Or what am I maybe not doing as well as I could be? Because I want to avoid getting clocked, avoid getting read as trans. But then it also, like, it turns out that in this particular case, the guy just Googled my screen name on OkCupid, which happened to be Loose Bricks, which is now kind of more synonymous with all the trans stuff I was doing back then, not as much, but he was able to figure it out. And so the idea that, somebody Googled me before the first date was a little bit weird. I hadn't had that happen before or since, which, at least as far as I know. So that was a little bit weird, but just the fact that you ask it so nonchalantly like that is really, really awkward. Like how you ask that question, how you bring it up, when you bring it up, where. All of those details are probably, extremely important to the person who's being asked the question, because I don't think that, I have no problem if somebody asks me, what's being trans like? And I can, ask some probing questions like, well, what do you mean? Or, well, what part of being trans? But being just asked, what's that like? Like, oh, you do something that I have no desire to learn about or even spend 5 seconds thinking about critically before I just spring this question on you randomly in the middle of a date. Extremely awkward, and I think that was just more the guy being awkward than anything else. And then I think probably the last type of dating disaster type of story I have is not necessarily a particular person, but it's this idea that somehow being willing to date a trans person absolves you of any other requirement of being a dateable entity. Basically, the fact that, well, I'm okay with you being trans, so that means we should fuck on the first date. Or, I'm okay with you being trans, just so long as we only fuck and we don't date. Or, whatever. Like, you don't get a cookie for being okay with me being trans. That's table stakes for us having any kind of ongoing relationship. And I've dealt with plenty of people who seem to have that mindset where really I should be thankful that they're interested in somebody like me, and I should basically be throwing my mouth at their dick for the rest of my life as a result. And I think that kind of entitlement, or whatever you want to, assholeish, as basically being a dick, yeah, probably the most awkward thing you can do is that. Okay.